So, when it came to educating your own children, you created a brick and mortar school, the Khan Lab School. Why?
Well, in 2011, some folks reached out to me and said, "Hey, you want to write a book?" I was initially skeptical. I was like, "Why would I write a book? I can communicate on YouTube. It's an easy way to get stuff out there." But they said, "Well, no, books has a certain gravity to it, etc." I'm like, "Okay, I'll give it a shot," and I'm really glad I did because it does flesh out your thinking. The first third of the book was the One World Schoolhouse, and the first third of the book was about the history of education. I said, oh, well, what was happening here is we had mass public education came about 200-300 years ago. We had to make compromises. We couldn't give everyone a personalized education the way Alexander the Great had with Aristotle. So we batched students together, moved them together to set pace. And then the last third of the book, I allowed my imagination to go free a little bit, say, well, given what we know and the tools and the way the world is going, what should education look like? What would an ideal school look like? And it wasn't just about using technology. It was about students being able to teach each other. It's about mixed age classrooms. It's about mastery learning, which is just the idea that if you haven't learned something well yet, you should be able to keep working on it. It's silly to get a C in Algebra 1 and then somehow try to get an A in Algebra 2. Or it's even sillier if you got a C in Algebra 1 and then you get an A in Algebra 2, that C in Algebra 1 is still on your transcript. Clearly, if you got an A in Algebra 2, you know your Algebra 1 as well. So that should now be upgraded to an A. It was also based on the idea that if you could learn some of your core skills more efficiently, you could have more time and space for some of the higher order things, creating things, being entrepreneurial, going out into the world. And there was a few families, actually mainly at Khan Academy employees, who were like, hey, let's start a little, I don't know, pod school, homeschooling cooperative around these ideas. And then when the Khan Academy board caught wind, they're like, hey, it looks like you're actually trying to start the One World Schoolhouse. And I was like, yeah, pretty much. And some were skeptical that we should be starting a brick and mortar school. Some were like, no, this is exactly what the world needs to push the envelope even more. So we did set it up as a separate entity from Khan Academy. So it isn't the same organization. But that's when we started Khan Lab School. And yeah, now it's a pre-K through 12 school out here in Northern California. And it's I'm learning a ton. I've learned a ton, but for the most part, I've been pretty excited about what it's been able to do.
What has it taught you about the balance between individualized learning and batch instruction? Are there places where batch instruction is called for, as much as that can seem like sort of a mechanized version of learning? And what has it taught you about that balance between being in person in a brick and mortar place versus being able to get the instruction you need online? Have your views on that changed?
No, I think it's my views on that have only gotten stronger, but they haven't changed. When I started this, I said, well, look, I don't want my kids or anyone's kids to only be, no matter how well a tool like Khan Academy might be able to teach them. And obviously now it's in theory even better with things like AI. That's not what it's all about. Like, you don't want children who don't know how to interact, who deal with conflict, don't have support from other human beings, both their peers and faculty. And if you look at like the Common Core standards or any state standards, they don't explicitly call out things like this, like should be able to deal with conflict, should be able to be resilient, should be able to communicate their needs. And actually, you're able to do that more explicitly in an environment like this when you can offload some, not all, some of the core skills by leveraging technology. But even when we're leveraging technology, a lot of it is, okay, students are learning at their own time and pace, but now that you're in the room together, interact with each other, tutor each other, or do something a little bit deeper. So, yeah, I'm not batch implies that you're just moving everyone together at a set pace, regardless of whether it's good for them or not. So not a fan of batch processing for education, but I am a fan of being in a cohort. And sometimes it is good for it to be an age-based cohort. You are going through certain life stages for the most part at the same time, certain levels of maturity. And sometimes it's really great to have mixed age cohorts, which the traditional batch system usually misses, where I think a lot of, and we're seeing this at Khan Lab School, a lot of the bullying behavior, a lot of the, I would call it teenage angst behavior. The theory is that, look, they're proto-adults. They're capable of responsibility, but traditional schools don't give them a lot of responsibility. We still treat them like kids. But if you tell a 16-year-old, hey, you're going to go mentor that 13-year-old, it matures them, and they're less likely to use bad language. They're less likely to bully someone else. because they feel like they're a leader in the community, that people are going to be listening to the things that they're going to be saying. So yeah, overall, it's just only reinforced how important it is. And I'll say one other thing that, I didn't design it when we founded the school, but we're hearing loud and clear. Our kids we've had 5 graduating classes already, and they're doing excellent in all the traditional, their standardized test scores, where they're getting into college. I think the median student is getting into a college with like a 10% acceptance rate. So they're doing all of that stuff great. But if you typically saw a school that had if you saw our types of test scores and placement, and, a school where kids are typically taking calculus, say their freshman or sophomore years in high school, you say, oh, that's going to be a pressure cooker school. That's going to be a school where the kids are elbowing each other out and all. And if you visit our school, it's the exact opposite of that. You would not see a more collaborative group of kids, because they're not going against each other. In a mastery-based system, they're all working together so that they can all elevate and get to proficiency.
I might be biased because I'm Italian and I'm an alum of the Montessori school, but it sounds very much like the Khan Lab school is very similar to a Montessori school. But one of the criticisms that people raised to Maria Montessori was that at the end of the day, it was a school for the rich. And certainly, it seems to me that Cab Lab School is a school for the rich in Mountain View. I don't want to know the tuition, but I don't think it's free as the rest of your program. What I find it fascinating is the free part of your education, because that changes really, in a way, the philosophy of the education. And I was perplexed by some of the stuff you wrote, because I don't know whether you're playing nice or you're really nice, or you're sort of trying to. When you are describing the history of education, it's clear that when mass education was introduced to it was not a free gift that the upper class were giving to the lower class, was a training a workforce to go to work in a factory. And all the discipline that is embedded in the traditional school is because you had to transform some anarchic farmers into disciplined factory workers. And so every mass education is, some sense, distorted by the desire of the people giving this education. And every for-profit school is distorted by the desire to capture profit. You have found a mechanism, at least so far, to provide education to the masses basically for free. And that enables you to have a completely different kind of education. And if I were you, I would push more this idea of how your philosophy of education is completely different than the rest, because it doesn't need to provide a very high return.
Yeah, well, but we do want to make it have so it has arguably a higher return. But you're absolutely right. Khan Lab School is not a free school. We have done it as a private school. We have another offering, World School, which we've done with Arizona State, which is actually free to any student in Arizona. So anyone listening in Arizona should take a look at it. And we have had to charge outside of Arizona because we don't have a charter, but that's a whole other thing. But your point about Khan Academy, well, one, I will defend the public education system a little bit. The public education system is engineered or designed based on a factory model, because during the industrial age, that is how we learned to do things at reasonable quality at scale. I will say that it has done very positive things. Literacy rates have gone through the roof. The middle class has expanded dramatically. So there's a bunch of very, very good things that have happened. But to your point, we now have tools where we don't necessarily have to make that compromise, where mass education has to be one size fits all. And so our main theory of action is, yes, there could be Khan Lab schools and Khan World schools. And we're even exploring ways that people can independently work on Khan Academy and get credentials that can help them get into college or get a job. But we think the real movement is going to happen by us working with traditional schools, meeting them where they are, because that's where most students are, and helping those schools and those teachers personalize education that much more. And so that's where, most of the energy of Khan Academy, and you mentioned our marginal cost is close to free, but it does cost our budget's about $90 million a year, which we primarily fund through philanthropy. But most of that energy of that team, it's about 350 people now, is to build tools that we can go into schools and we can show those schools and train those schools. If you use it this way and it fits into your traditional curriculum, it'll improve outcomes. Now, I also do dream that one day we can revisit some of the things that we're forcing kids to learn. But I think it's important to meet the system where it is.
So most of your area of intervention has been K to 12. What about university in general? Do you see that your next future is to create a Khan University, or in addition to Khan Academy?
Simple answer is yes. When I talk about, there's a young girl, I just recently met her. She's at MIT, freshman at MIT, just finished her first year. It turns out she grew up in Kabul. Taliban takes over. Her family flees to Pakistan. She has zero education. Khan Academy was her education, both when she was in Kabul and she couldn't go to schools, and then when she was a refugee in Pakistan. She gets in her mind that she wants to go to MIT. She applies. MIT's super impressed by her, but they're like, we have no idea whether you're ready for MIT or not. And so we have a mechanism on Schoolhouse.world where you can prove your knowledge by, it records your face, your screen while you take a Khan Academy assessment. You can validate your knowledge. And UChicago is part of this as well. And she did that, and they admitted her. And I met her when she came out to California as part of the Sam Altman AI boot camp for like the top engineers in the country. She was out here in Silicon Valley, and my wife and I had dinner with her, and so that reinforces that we need to figure out ways of credentialing, high school credentialing, and then college credentialing. And yes, I do think that I hope in the next 5-10 years, us or other people or in partnership with other people can find ways. And I don't think it's going to be a replacement for a U Chicago or a Harvard or a Stanford. I think those are always going to be luxury goods. But I hope we can create alternative pathways where they could be close to free, but provide just as strong of a signal that your material, you're just as qualified as someone from UChicago or Stanford or Harvard or wherever. So yes, that is something I hope to do before I retire.